3. Read it with me. Say, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life." We don't want anything in our lives that offends or grieves or pushes away God. We don't want anything in there. Now, as I was preparing for this morning's message, I thought, I like to consider myself a pretty progressive guy, a pretty progressive pastor. And I don't know, you may know this about me, and the Lord has had mercy on me, because where I drop off Elizabeth for the bus, there are no roundabouts between me and the bus drop-off. Oh, thank you, Jesus, because there were 2 to get to her daycare, and I go out of my stinking head. And so I thought maybe I should offer you a service. Rock Church, if you are a member here and you come to church here, I would be willing to do roundabout tutoring and get in your car with you. And so I thought, but then I thought, no, maybe that wouldn't work. Maybe it needs to be more general. So then I thought maybe this.
And so pretty that I hardly can believe I'm real. La 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 la.
Burn in hell!
See that pretty girl in the mirror there?
What mirror where?
Who could that attractive girl be?
Who, which one, where?
Such a pretty face, such a pretty face, such a pretty smile, such a pretty
Yes.
I feel stunning.
You feel stunning
And entrancing. Feel like running and dancing for
joy, for I'm loved by a pretty, wonderful God.
So if you need me to do that for you this week, I'm there for you. Sometimes in preparing for church, I'm going through what I'm going to be talking about, and I think, oh yeah, I want to play that clip from whatever, and now today it's relatively easy to do it. And sometimes it takes a relative, some pretty sharp editing to get all the swear words out. But you don't remember the swear words when you know that they got people cuss at him. Burning in Hell was pretty tame compared to some of the other things that was said to him in that scene. One time, I was going to do a scene where I was going to show the clip from Life with Brian from Monty Python, where the people are too far away from Jesus and they can't quite hear, and they're like the meek, and they're trying to hear, and they're getting it all wrong because they're too far away because there are no PA systems. Well, they throw I was going to throw that to my youth group, and so I'm setting this up, and I'm playing the video, and I'm just queuing it up, and then they throw the F-bomb out right in the middle. Whoa! Hope my boss was walking by the room there, and so I quick turned it down and changed things around. And so we're going to look at anger today. Now, I promise to give you some stuff today that is going to help you with your anger, okay? I'm pretty confident that it's going to help you with your anger. And so, wrong ways to handle anger, all right? And these are the ways that we handle anger automatically. Now, there's 2 kinds of people in the world, okay? The first one is a spewer, okay? A spewer. Now, what does a spewer do? A spewer spews. I mean, they get mad and they just let her rip. Do you know these people? They get fired up and they will rip into you, or maybe it's you, and you have the ability to tear into somebody, tear them down, and just leave them a puddle on the floor when you're done. Now, I've noticed, I don't know if this is always true, this is not scientific at all, some of those people that I've known, they're spewers, they get mad, they let it out, and then they kind of get over being mad quick. They get mad quick and they get over mad quick. Problem is that the damage that's done with the spewing doesn't recover as quickly as the person, okay? And so someone gets mad, they spew, they let it rip, they tear into somebody, and then they get over it. However, they've left, this big wake of destruction in their path. The Proverbs chapter 14, verse 7, it says, a quick-tempered person does foolish things. A quick-tempered person does foolish things. And so, I thinking about my own life, and maybe you can take a minute and look back through some times when you spewed, okay? Maybe you don't consider yourself a spewer, but maybe at some point you spewed, okay? And you let it rip and you did what you did. Are you ever Now, I know what the answer is for me, and I only live in my head, okay? But are you ever happy in the long term with how you handled the situation when you spewed? I can't think of a time when I have spewed, and afterward I said, I sure am glad I got that angry because I really handled that situation well. I don't know. I can't think of a time. Now, someone might say, well, sometimes you got to get mad because you need to take a stand, and well, maybe so, but I can't think of a time when I was fired up and let her go, and afterward I said, I sure am glad I got angry because I fixed that situation. No, it's never happened. And that actually is kind of what this Bible, a quick-tempered person, somebody that gets mad and spews, he does foolish things. Now, maybe you're also like me. I don't know. I have a list. Okay, I have a list in my life of things that if I got 10 tokens to redo situations in my life, there would have been that one girlfriend before Anger Lisa. But a lot of those things is when I spewed. That I wish I could go back in that situation and take those words back. I have a bunch in my top 10 that if I could change anything throughout my life, I wish I could just grab that moment back. Because once that moment happens, it's done, and there's no fixing it, and you spewed. Because when my emotions kick in and I handle things out of overflow of my emotions, I do foolish things. And that's exactly what the scripture tells us. Now, there's another way to handle anger. And so some of you are spewers, some of you are stewers. Okay. Stewers. Is that a word? See, it is now. Stewers. Some of you are stewers. Now, what does a stewer do? A stewer doesn't blurt it out right away. A stewer pushes it down, right? He pushes it down. Now, you might think, well, that's the better thing to do, right? Except that's not what the stewer, what the stewer does? The stewer pushes it down, but then they let her rip in other spots, okay? This is the wife, not mine, ever. She's mad at you about something, okay? She's mad at you about something. She doesn't tell you what it is, but you're getting picked up for all this other stuff, right? And you just can't do nothing right. And what she's really mad at you for isn't what she's mad at you for, okay? But I do the same thing. I do this to my kid. Okay, I am dealing with something. It's making me angry. I'm pushing it down. And sometimes when you stew and you push things in, it still bleeds out. The only difference is now you don't get to pick where it goes anymore. Did you hear that? There's a lot of wisdom right in that little sentence. I want you to grab that, okay? When you are a stewer, when you stew on these things, you push it down, it still comes out. It's just that you don't get to choose where it comes out. And I've learned in myself and watching other people, again, I get to only live in my head, but I know it happens in me too. Sometimes what I think I'm angry about, I'm really not angry about. Okay? What I think I'm upset about, I'm really not upset about. What's happening is there's something over here that I'm upset about, but it's bleeding over here. And it's coming out over here. How do you know? And I'm not going to spend very long on this because I camped on this actually a few weeks ago. But your emotions are a thermometer. Okay? They can tell you what's happening inside of you. They are not a thermostat. What you think about is your thermostat. You cannot control how you feel, but you can control what you think about. Okay? Now, I'm not going to camp there. I'd love to camp there, but I camped there about 3 weeks ago, and so I'm not. So go back and listen again. And I knew I'd be tempted to go on a tangent right here, but I'm not going to. But that is pretty huge if you can grab it just in that little paragraph, okay? And so stewers suppress their anger. In the book of Psalms, we find in chapter 32, verse 3, it says, "When I kept silent, my bones waste away through my groaning all day long." Then we find out in Luke chapter 15, verse 28, the oldest brother became angry and he refused to go in. So he didn't, and sometimes we don't want to deal with the problem because we're embarrassed what the problem is. Okay? So the older brother gets angry, but he couldn't say, "I'm angry because my little brother came home and you're being nice to him." Because that wouldn't make him look very good, right? that's a lot of the reason why I think we misdirect where our anger is going, because what's really bothering us, we don't even want to admit to ourselves. You know, he didn't want to admit that you're being a spoiled brat, and being kind to him is not taking any kindness away from you. So what does he do? He goes out and he stews. The older brother became angry, and he refused to go in. So, exploding is not God's best for you, okay? And also, stewing about it is not God's best for you. So the question then becomes, how do we deal with our anger? What do we do with our anger? Now, we get angry. We know that God gets angry. There it is. Oops, I went ahead too far. This is the one I want. What do we do with our anger? If there's sinful anger, put it out. You got to put it out. So you got to get rid of the sinful anger. Now, we're going to talk about righteous anger here in just a minute. But most anger that we're dealing with is sinful anger. The SOAP Bible verse for this morning, the verse made a real point that your anger is not the same as God's anger. Okay? That human anger is a bad thing, the Apostle Paul is saying. I actually forget the book right now, but it was in this morning's SOAP, actually. And I thought, wow, that really fits in good with today. But if it's sinful anger, we can put it out. So what do we do with it? What do we do with it? Now, this is the biggest point of the whole message today, okay? And I want you to repeat after me. Shut your face. Shut your face. Why? Because you can't control how you feel very good. You just get mad. Remember, your emotions are not your thermostat. You just feel what you feel. But, and this is true for all sin, sin becomes sin when you act on it, not because you feel a certain way. You're a sinner. You're going to feel sinful things. That's just going to happen. However, if you control what you do, and so how do you handle it when you get angry? Okay, now, Pastor Scott, I realize that I don't want to react big to it. I don't want to explode, okay? I don't want to bottle it up, but now I'm angry. What do? Shut your face. Shut your face. Because I'm never happy with how I handled the situation while I was angry. Now, this is a fun paradox in the scripture, and I am going to give you, it's just too fun. There's a Bible verse in the Bible that says, if someone is mean to you, put burning coals on their head by being kind to them. My grandma used to always say that to him. Well, I'm upset at this person. Well, you should be really nice to him, because that's actually meaner than anything else you could do. Okay? And so, if they're mean to you, be kind in return and put burning coals on their head. Now, I want to give you an example that fits in really good here, how you can do this, okay? And this is kind of fun. This is meaner than anything you could possibly do to somebody, but it still is in a Christ-like way, okay? Something happens. Now, I mentioned to you a few weeks ago that the maddest, we were talking about lying, so this is 3 weeks ago. The maddest I've been at somebody for like the last 10 years was when someone looked me right in the eye and lied to me. And I trusted them, and it really made me angry. And this is, I said, do this. And I tell you what, it is probably the meanest thing you can do. I said, I am too angry with you right now to deal with this. I will talk to you Monday. It was Thursday. Completely freaked that person out. But I knew that there was absolutely no way I was going to handle that situation as angry as I was, because I was emotionally engaged. I was ticked. Like I said, maddest I've been, I think, the last 10 years. I can't think of a time I was madder. And so I knew that there was no way that I was going to be happy with anything I said. And it tortured this guy too, but it was really a good thing, because you know what happens in that period of time? Now, normally it's not that extreme. Normally I can give myself a few days and the person doesn't even know about it. Okay, something happens and I'm angry about. I'm irritated. Might be a better word. It's not like I get super angry, but I'm irritated about something, and give it a few days or whatever, and that person usually doesn't even know that I'm angry with them, which is actually a good thing, you know. And so spewing doesn't work and stewing doesn't work, but I still have to deal with the problem, right? You see, the other thing with stewers is if they don't deal with the problem, you never deal with the problem. You know, you could make an argument that you're better off spewing it, because at least then it's out there. okay? Stewers, they just, fix problems that aren't even the real problem. And so don't be too lazy to deal with it, okay? We do this with our kids, right? I'm watching TV. Elizabeth does something, she messes up an area, and I don't do anything about it, and I just let it go. I let it go. Or maybe there's a behavior that she's doing that is irritating me, but it's not, But then I reach my boiling point, and then I deal with it, and I get mad, right? I finally I stew until I get mad, and so I don't deal with it until I deal with it poorly. I want to encourage you to deal with what you got to deal with. So in that period of time between me getting irritated and me dealing with the situation, sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a week, and I'm ready to deal with it. A couple things happen. Number one, my emotion subsides, okay? I'm no longer as emotionally engaged. As I have time to think about it and pray about it, because a lot of these conversations I pray about quite a bit because I want to do a good job, I start asking the question, what role did I play? And you know what almost always comes out of it? I did not communicate clear enough, and I did not have clear enough expectations. And so that's what I almost always find. In every conflict I have, I share some responsibility someplace, okay? I don't usually share all the responsibility, although that's entirely possible. But it gives me a chance to reflect upon my role, okay? And so what responsibility did I play in this? And then, so that's the first part. What's my part? What did I do wrong? And again, it's usually I didn't communicate good enough, and my expectations were not communicated correctly. They didn't know what they wanted from me, okay? Then secondly, I need to ask the question, what do I want? What do I want? Now, what do you mean, Pastor? What do you want? I want that person to stop doing this. Well, usually if you take a step back from a situation and you say, well, what do I want from this person? I want them to stop doing this. Is that really what I want? What I really want is for this person to respect me. Sometimes if you ask the question, what do I really want to happen? Then the idea of punishment goes out the window. Because sometimes when we're just motivated by our anger, we're not really concerned about what we want to change. We're concerned about punishing, right? I mean, we're going to let them have it. And we're looking to spank them, not heal the situation, okay? But when I give myself a couple of days, I can see where my responsibility is. And then I ask, well, what do I want? Well, I want to punish them because they hurt me. That's not a Christ-like thing, okay? And it does not solve the problem. It only makes it worse. Okay? It only makes it worse. And so, okay, what do I want? Well, I want this situation to change. What's the best way to make this situation change? Well, spanking them, and I mean verbally spanking them, letting them know that they're an idiot and leaving them there. And I've done that. And you can be right and do that and not be right. Okay? I can't think of any situations as I stand before you here today where the right thing to do is to spank somebody and to discipline. Ask, what do I want to change? Then your conversation will be different. Now still have the conversation. Otherwise nothing will change. And now you're stewing, okay? So you need to look at your responsibility and then ask the question, what do I want? When you do that, and you take punishing them out of the equation. Now, like with your kids, sometimes punishing can still be part of the equation. But it's no longer just to punish them. Do you see what I'm saying? If you at work and you got someone coming in late, if you come in late, you're going to have to, pick up that time at the end of the day. Maybe that's kind of a punishment, and that might be appropriate. But you're not doing it out of the same spirit as doing it just to punish them. You know what I'm saying? Do you hear me? And so, why do we lash out in anger? So what do I want? And moving on. Proverbs 17:14. Starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam. So drop the matter before the dispute breaks out. You know what I've also noticed when I give myself a couple of days? I'm irritated. I give myself some little time. I realize that I was just being selfish and I got nothing to talk about. Okay? Sometimes when I give it some time, I realize I wasn't mad at this. I was mad at this, and it had nothing to do with them. That little bit of time allows me to do that. So, shut your face. And one of the things that'll happen when you shut your face is you don't breach the dam. you don't even go there because you ask the question, what do I want? And you can't get what you want from that person. Okay? That person's not even part of the problem. You were just out to punish them for some reason. What you want is not in there. And so, don't even breach the dam. You could be a lot more easygoing than you are, maybe. Maybe there are things in your life that you're trying to control that are not worth trying to control. But you find yourself trying to control them. Okay? So shut your face and then back up from the situation, and maybe you don't even have to breach the dam. Some good points. I hope you're getting some of this. This is pretty profound stuff. I'm just telling you, okay? Let it go. Be easygoing. Life is too short. James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20, it says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Because human anger, this is actually from this morning, human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Human anger is different than God's anger. Okay? So then what do we do with our anger? What do we do with our anger? What makes God angry? Now, I told you we'd be talking about this. There is a righteous anger, right? So we look at the scripture, and I've seen some people say, well, getting angry is not a bad thing, because sometimes you just got to get angry, because even Jesus got angry, okay? And then they pull out a verse, and they prove that even Jesus got angry, and they go to Mark chapter 3, verse 5, and they say, Jesus looked around to them in anger, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. So he said to the man, stretch out your hand, and he stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. So Jesus got angry, so I can get angry too. And then they might even say, well, you know, one time, Jesus got so angry that he whipped people. They were selling stuff in the temple, and Jesus went in, and he turned over tables, and he had a temper tantrum. And I'd agree with you that Jesus got angry, especially in those two instances. But let's take a step back for a minute. Who did Jesus get angry at? Jesus got angry at religious people that were getting in the way of the gospel getting to people. He was angry when people who thought that they were religious and they were prideful got in the way of him reaching people that he loved. Okay? The Bible verse that we read, they were giving him a hard time about healing on the Sabbath. And he's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to do bad or are you going to do good on the Sabbath? You guys are missing the point. And a lot of times, us Christians, we can begin to miss the point. We can let things offend us that shouldn't really even, people are supposed to sin. You're going to be all offended that somebody swears around you or swears in church, sort of. Well, burn in hell. The context wasn't really swearing, okay? But we can get offended at all this stuff, but I want to tell you, Jesus didn't. Now, we don't have time this morning, but if you want, take a minute and read Jesus' conversation with the woman at the well. Here's a woman that has been living in sin, and she has been away from God, and she's in the scholars tell us that she was at the well at the middle of the day because she was embarrassed to go in the morning because that's when everybody be talking about her. And look at the care and the tenderness that Jesus shows the woman at the well. Look at the care and the tenderness, completely free of judgmentalness, that Jesus shows the woman caught in the act of adultery. Woman, all of your accusers have gone. Go and sin no more. I want to tell you that, yes, there is a time to get angry, but do you know what the anger should be inside of you? The anger should be that the enemy wants to kill and destroy your loved ones and your family. That is what should make you, because that's what gets Jesus angry. You should be angry when self-righteous hypocrites get up and give us a bad name because they go out and they hold unloving signs and they try to offend people. You should get angry. If you walk down the street and you see what I've seen a few times, guys standing up and as people are walking by, he says, hey, you whore. And he starts yelling at people on the street. I don't know if you've seen those preachers. I've seen them. I've gotten in arguments with them. I was at a table a little while ago and somebody was speaking about doing that kind of preaching and I chewed him out. I got angry. Matter of fact, I got so angry. It was my best friend, Pastor Kevin, and a bunch of other pastors were there. And this guy wasn't a pastor, but he was saying this. I got to do this. You got to walk people. And he's, and I sit and I went like this. Boy, Jesus never did that. I was getting angry. I'd also been fasting for like 20 days. And I was ticked. And I said, Jesus never did that. My Jesus never spoke to a sinner that way. And I got up and left because I was angry. And I freaked this guy out. Kevin told me later, he said, thank you for saying that, because the guy was in his church. Thank you for saying that, He needed to hear that. And I said, I was probably a little more intense than I meant to me. But, like I said, I've been fasting for 20 days. And one of the things that fasting does, I think it gets you closer to the heart of God. I was deeply offended that anybody would treat somebody that Jesus loves so much that way. I was so offended. And I'll tell you, if you're going to get mad about something, that's a pretty good place to get